Welcome to Tritiyo Matra. We have two very special guests with us, and to my left, Professor and Endowed Chair in Urban Entomology in Texas A&M University, Dr. এডওয় Vargo, and to my right, Dr. Manjur Ahmed Chowdhury, Chairman of Bangladesh River Conservation Commission and Chairman of the Center for Governance Studies. Dr. Vargo and Dr. Chowdhury, welcome to the show. Dr. এডওয় Vargo, you have been staying in Bangladesh for a week now, and so what is your experience regarding Bangladesh? Is this your first time in Bangladesh?
This is my first time in Bangladesh, yes. But I've been having a great time. It's a beautiful country. I've been able to get out of the city and go to Tritiyo and some surrounding areas. And it's very lush and green. And I've been learning about the culture. So we got to visit Rabindranath Tagore's house. And got to hear some songs. So learning about the culture, and the food has been really good. It's been excellent. And it's been a pleasure. I've been traveling with Chairman Dr. Chowdhury and learning about the river system too, and learning how some of the politics works and how he has to work with some of the local officials as a national official, and hear some of the dialogue that takes place. It's very encouraging. So obviously Bangladesh is a country with many people. And in the US, we don't know that much about Bangladesh. We don't hear that much about it. We don't learn that much about it. So it's been a pleasure to be here. So yeah, there are lots of people here, but you can see the development taking place at a very rapid rate. All the brick factories and all the building and construction going on, it's pretty amazing. But I've been impressed with the dedication of the officials at the national and local levels, and the high level of discussion that takes place. The breadth of knowledge they have is really, truly remarkable. So I hope that I'm here as an ecologist working with Dr. Chowdhury on looking at river conservation with the National River Conservation Commission. And I'm hoping that with all of the development taking place, that some policies can be put into place to ensure that growth happens responsibly and sustainably, so that to protect the environment. So I think it's important that we protect the environment because all of our futures depend on the environment.
You also visited Bangabandhu Museum too.
Yes. So that was really good to learn about the history of Bangladesh and the making of the country. I mean, in the U.S. we hear about, the independence of the Indian subcontinent. We know about the Liberation War, but we don't know a lot of the details. So to actually see the house and where the family lived and where he lived was a special experience.
And you are a professor in urban and structural entomology. You have studied entomology for many years and published so many papers too. What motivated you to choose this field of study?
That's a good question. As an undergraduate, I was a biology major, and I got very interested in social insects. So things like ants and honeybees and wasps and termites that live in colonies, where individuals work together to form what we call a superorganism. So you have a bunch of individuals working together to form something bigger than themselves. And I was always fascinated by this process, how this works and how these societies function. And so when I was looking for graduate programs, I knew of Dr. Murray Blum, who is a very well-known entomologist at the University of Georgia, studying ants. And so I applied to work with him, and I went there, and that's where I met Dr. Chowdhury, who was also a graduate student at the University of Georgia. So.
Dr. Manjur Ahmed Chowdhury, it's been 9 months since you have joined as the chairman of Bangladesh River Conservation Commission. So far, what is your experience as the responsible person of the organization?
The first thing is that the job of protecting about 20% of Bangladesh, that's water areas, river area, which is a huge area. And the problem is tremendous. That you have to protect these rivers and water bodies from encroachment. You have to protect these rivers, water bodies, estuaries, and other water bodies from pollution, and also maintain the navigability of these rivers and water bodies. And so it is a very challenging job, and our manpower is limited, but our determination is very high. So we are forging ahead. We have already done some works. We have put some sand mining, sand pirates into jail, and we are driving them out. And recently, you see the Padda bridge, they are mining sands very near to the piers. And so we send our people and we asked the authorities to stop it. And then we investigated that area just with Dr. Vargo was there with us on our way to Kustia. We investigated that area. So it is a challenging job, but we are not afraid to take on the task. We are doing it.
Great. Dr. Edward, recently a study led by your lab discovered that a common ant species showed physiological and behavioral changes during urbanization. The research will shed light on how invasive species cope with changes in the environment. Would you like to share more details on that research with our audience?
Sure. Urbanization is a process that's happening all around the world. Urban environments are important environments in terms of the landmass they now occupy, and there's every indication that they're only going to get bigger as more and more people move into cities. So a big question is, how will the organisms other than humans that live in these environments adapt and survive? And so there's a big field of study now looking at how organisms adapt to urban environments. And so we've studied this one ant that changes its social organization between the natural habitats that are around the city and the urban habitats that are in the city. So around the city, the ant colonies are very small. Ant colonies like honeybee colonies have a queen and workers, and these colonies in the natural areas have a single queen. But in the urban areas, they have many queens, and they span a much larger area. And when we look at invasive species of ants around the world, the ones that are most important, fire ants, but also Argentine ants and the yellow crazy ant and other ants, they form what we call super colonies, where they have many, many queens, and they cover vast areas and ecologically dominate areas. And so there's always been a question of how this process occurs, because in the native range they have pretty small colonies that are pretty inconspicuous and not problematic. But then in the invasive range, they change their social organization. And so this species that we have in the US is a native species in the US, but it changes its social organization in a way that resembles the invasive species, going from natural to urban environments. So this is a very good system for us to try to understand this process of how these species change in a way that makes them invasive and an ecological and economic problem.
And how do you think this year's COP27 ended? What do you think about the decided loss and damage fund? Do you think that the developed countries are doing enough to combat this global issue?
I didn't catch the first part of the question.
How do you think this year's COP27 ended?
Yes.
And what do you think about the decided loss and damage fund? And do you think the developed countries are doing enough to combat this global issue?
No, I think
issues?
that definitely the developed countries are not doing enough. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of support. I can speak from the perspective of my country. Mm-hmm. I have some information about other developed countries in Europe and so on, but I know that in my country, especially young people, it's a very big issue, climate change. And the government hasn't taken this seriously enough. And I think that many people realize that the developing countries share the burden of the consequences of climate change. When we see increased storm activity, flooding, sea level rises, those are going to disproportionately affect developing countries. And yet this is a problem that's largely caused by the developed countries. So I think there's a lot more we can do. And I'm hoping that politicians in the near future will take this more seriously.
Dr. Chowdhury, we know there are many rivers in Bangladesh that are dying, and there are so many issues that need to be dealt with. So would you like to share your plan in the next 1 year as the chairman of the River Conservation Commission of Bangladesh?
We already started a program to clean the rivers around Dhaka city, and we have a plan to do this, clean the rivers before the next birthday of our father of the nation, 𝗙𝗶𝗹𝗵 Rahman, that is the 17th of March. And we are working on it, but the progress is not that much. Progress is not much. In Shabar area, we have some success, but in other areas, like in Kraniganj, in Rupganj, we are expecting that there will be some more renewed, work to stop the pollution. And the problem is about the pollution is that the law, we have plenty of laws to prevent pollution, but the laws are not applied properly. That's one issue we have identified. Mm-hmm. Regarding the other areas, we have plans. We have plans. First thing is that we respond to the if there is an immediate occupation, encroachment or pollution problem, we respond immediately depending on the severity of the problem. But in otherwise, we are collecting data, we are monitoring the situation, we are in the process of procuring funds to equip our staffs, such as pollution monitoring, pollution mapping, and also we are going to acquire survey equipment. That's important to prevent encroachment, because large patches of rivers, large stretches of rivers, and also the canals within the city have been already occupied. We are planning to survey those areas and get their correct the plot numbers and declare those plot numbers as a public trust property, and they should be transferred to the number 1 Khutian in Bangladesh, Khutian, so that nobody can sell those plots, nobody can transfer those plots. So we will devalue the land they stole from the public, devalue through the legal process. That's what we are in the planning stage. And also regarding another thing, that there is a sand mining, illegal sand mining. It has everybody thinks that sand mining is a criminal activity. It's not so. Sand mining is required. Sand mining will be done, because without sand, we cannot continue our tremendous development work going on all over the country. You have seen that in our way to Kushtia and way back to Dhaka. So we are organizing a seminar on sand mining, how the sand mining can be done within the legal framework, and how sand mining can be done safely. And there are other sources of quality sands. We will try to identify those and help the sand mining communities to mine the sand with legally and also economically, and identifying the sources of good quality sands. Not all sands are useful for construction work. That is one thing we are trying to do. And also we are going to organize seminars and planning to empower the river police and also the industrial police, so that they can prevent pollution right away.
Okay. Dr. Vargo, what do you think the developing countries' role should be in combating climate change?
The developing countries. That's a good question. I think one thing that can be done is, as countries are developing, and they are developing. I see that here in Bangladesh. It's developing at an incredible rate. That hopefully you can learn some things that from some of the mistakes that we made in other developed countries when we developed. For example, taking care of our rivers.
Mm-hmm.
In the Mississippi River, there are lots of problems that have emerged that we're only realizing now. Some people realized some time ago, but it's becoming very well known and important. And so as you're developing, I think taking some lessons from what other countries have done that could be improved and incorporating those from sort of the beginning instead of trying to retroactively fix things. But the burden of climate change, I think, right now rests on the shoulders of the developed countries, because they are by far and away the major source of greenhouse gases and other issues that lead to climate change.
Dr. Chowdhury, we have seen the severity of the dengue fever countrywide recently, and the official death toll from the mosquito-borne diseases rose to 244 this year. Do you think we need to take a different approach to deal with the whole scenario? In that case, do you have any suggestions?
I made a lot of suggestions about dengue prevention and mosquito management during the last 2-3 decades. But the problem is that the government is not taking proper actions. They have a standard procedure for managing dengue, like initiating monitoring the dengue cases early in the season, not in the middle of the season, not when they are in a peak condition, early in the season. If you detect the cases during the March, April time, when it is a lean season for dengue, what you do, you find out the location where the mosquitoes are, they have virus. They have virus in their bodies because there is a dengue patients. And first thing is that you kill the virus-bearing mosquitoes, that is Aedes aegypti, and then by applying fogging applications or ULV application, and then raising awareness such as cleaning the pots and pans, keeping the water dry, containers dry, and other actions they can take. In that way, the virus will not be able to spread to other areas. That way, you will be able to contain the spread of virus, the number of virus patients within the limited scale. That's the approach India has taken. And they have solved more or less their dengue, chikungunya, and they have also malaria problem by just monitoring this. And also you monitor the serotype. You should have a different monitoring approach. What they are doing is a pre-monsoon, monsoon, post-monsoon sampling. This is for malaria. Mm-hmm. This was not dengue. For dengue, you have to have a round-the-year sentinel sampling. There are techniques. It is available. It's not something that you have to do a lot of research work. It's there. But the point is, they are not willing to do that because dengue, mosquito management,
Why they are not willing to do that?
Mosquito management is a science. It's a science. It's established science. Here it is not recognized as a scientific discipline or whatever. The doctors, medical doctors, they try to control mosquito. Mm-hmm. If an anthropologist, if a physicist, if a geographer wants to treat a patient, mm-hmm. the patient will die. Here, a doctor is trying to kill the mosquito, he has no training there. He has no training or experience in managing mosquitoes. For example, you see, you have to have a good monitoring system. Now this year, mosquito, dengue spread 62 districts out of 64. So all over Bangladesh, dengue is there, Aedes mosquito is there. But we do not know exactly, but there are indications that in the rural areas, in the countryside, in the district level, the dengue is being spread by Aedes albopictus. It's not Aedes aegypti. Aedes aegypti is a purely container breeding mosquito. Albopictus is a natural receptacles like tree holes, leaf axils and other places like this. So the control approach should be different. And moreover, you have a specific pesticide for controlling these vector-borne, these vectors. Those are not available here, there is no encouragement on the part of the government to register those products, make them available at the shops so that the general public can buy them and apply them themselves. It should be done. Otherwise, the problem will remain there. And in India, in Calcutta, what happened when they given the responsibility of vector control to the entomologist, they immediately that problem subsided. But this is not the case here in Bangladesh, unfortunately.
Okay. Dr. Vargo, as an entomologist, you study insects and you use science to identify, classify, and study insects and their relationships to plants and animal life. So what is your best achievement and what challenges do you find in your work?
My best achievements. I would say working on termites and understanding the breeding system of termites. So termites, like ants and bees, have a queen and a king that reproduce, and they often have multiple kings or queens. And with my colleague in Japan, Kenji Matsura, we discovered that in one species of termite, the queens can be replaced by the mother queen that starts the colony through asexual reproduction. So that she can be replaced, she can produce new daughter queens without any fertilization of the eggs. And this was new to termites. We hadn't known this, and once we discovered it, it's been found to be very common in other species. So it's a brand new reproductive system that we didn't know about in termites. But I think that is part of a general area that I've contributed to in terms of the breeding system of termites. And the second part of the question?
The second part of the question is that what challenges do you find in your work?
The biggest challenges we have is often collecting material. The termites that we study live underground. You can't see the nests, and so just finding the colonies can be difficult. And then thinking of questions about the reproductive system and then finding the right species to study them. And the other thing is that most termites live in tropical areas, and I live in a temperate area, so we have to travel to the tropics to do the work on the tropical species.
Dr. Chowdhury, would you like to share the overview of your take on the Delta Plan of Bangladesh?
Delta Plan is a very ambitious plan. It is about our river system. It's going to be a 100-year plan. It's going to be a 100-year project. And the beauty of this, or challenge of this project, is that those who are working right now, they will not be, and they will not leave when the project ends. So one generation is handing over, restoring the rivers, and then handing over to the next generation, maybe a generation later. So it is very ambitious, but it is also very, very useful in the sense that our country is mostly river. You see, you have seen a lot of rivers, and long rivers, wide rivers, small rivers, streams, all sorts of rivers. And Delta Plan will streamline many of these river system into something. So for example, the are planning to create 2 river corridors. River corridors will be something like a river where there will be a lot of industries on both sides of the river, because some of the rivers are 18 kilometers wide. So there will be a lot of land reclaimed, and there will be new industrial areas and other activities may be initiated in those areas. That's the good side. That's the optimistic side. The risk is that if you establish a lot of industries along the rivers, then there is a chance that the river system will be totally contaminated, and that will be a tremendous, that will be dangerous situation for Bangladesh, because our rivers provide lot of fishes, 𝗙𝗙cie fish we get from the Meghna estuary, provide supplies about 12% of animal protein for this for the people of this country. There are other species of fish. If we contaminate our river system, then we will not be able to ensure a proper nutrition for the vast majority of the people. So challenge is to develop, challenge is to industrialize, at the same time make sure that environment is not contaminated or degraded. Some of our rivers are already degraded. I am trying to, as a chairman of the National River Conservation Commission, that impress upon the industrialists that you can manufacture all the products you want, but you can do in a environmentally responsible way. That's possible. We have more than 100 green factories in this country. It is possible. So I'm going to work with them also closely, very closely. So Delta plan is a bigger plan, is a very ambitious plan, but already government has started. I think that it is one of the milestones of this government that they have initiated this. But still, there are a lot of things should be done, because river is a powerful element, natural element. You cannot tame them as the way you want. You can simply manage them. You cannot do a lot of things with rivers. Rivers in this country has, it's a very strong, powerful natural force. We know what happens when there is flooding in Bangladesh. In many parts of Bangladesh, we get a lot of floods, and that floods is devastating. So managing these rivers, creating corridors will be done with best scientific knowledge. That's why I have already to work with the river pollution problem. I have already contacted the University of Georgia, Odom School of Ecology. You know Dr. Odom. Odom was the pioneer in ecological system, and he was a professor at the Institute of Ecology at the University of Georgia. I was also there when Ed was at the University of Georgia. We knew Gene Odom, and we have contacted his institute, and we are in contact with them. We may bring a team. We are working to bring a team of river scientists, those who know actually what to do, how to restore the rivers. Restoration of rivers is different than just working with the engineering things. They are very much experienced. They have a river basin center, and also they have Savannah River Research Center. So they have a lot of experience with the river system, river management. We are going to bring a team here so that they can help us with our river problem.
Dr. Edward, Summit 2022 illustrated just how sensitive some key waterways are to droughts. The Mississippi, 𝗙𝗙cie, and Rhine rivers are all experience serious bottlenecks. Droughts are creating new supply chain problems. We know the importance of rivers to maintain ecological balance. What's your comment on this?
Well, of course, rivers are important in maintaining ecological balance. Rivers provide obviously fresh water for us and water for irrigation. They provide a source of biodiversity. They create special habitats. They create, they're usually wetlands associated with rivers that help absorb water when there's flooding. And in the case of the Mississippi, which is one I'm most familiar with, the Mississippi is a very highly engineered river. So Manjur said that we can't control rivers, but in the US we've tried. So we have a highly engineered river with levees, dams to control the water so that we can use the land right up to the water, and done away with a lot of the wetlands associated with the water. And so that creates problems when there's a high rainfall, that we don't have the mechanisms to absorb the water like we normally do. So the water will eventually rise above the levees, and when it does flood, it's a very serious problem. Whereas the natural wetlands make that problem much less of a problem.
And please continue.
Well, and then one of the main problems with the Mississippi is that we've changed the deposit of the sediments in the delta. So the amount of sediments going to the delta has decreased by 70% since the 1800s. And that's because of deep channels that have been cut into the river to make it more navigable and more friendly towards shipping. But it's cut off a lot of the fingers that feed the delta. So we have a lot of wetlands, a lot of islands that develop through the sediment. And those islands get washed away as storms come, so they erode. And in the Mississippi Delta, there's a tremendous erosion taking place. We lose the size of one football field every hour in the Mississippi Delta. So we've lost something like 5,000 square miles in the last 30 years or so. And that's because they've redirected the flow of the water and the flow of sediments, which are not replenishing the delta area. So it's a huge problem, and many people are thinking about how this can be changed, but it's a difficult problem because we have the shipping and everything in place. But after we had Hurricane Katrina in 2007, that caused very serious flooding in New Orleans. And this was one of the consequences of changing the flow of the river. And so people have been thinking about maybe how we can make some modifications to help redirect some of the sediments. So I hope that these kinds of practices are actually put into place, and we can start to restore some of that habitat.
I can add a little bit of that Mississippi problem. Mississippi, we think that most of the grains, most of the food materials in the US, especially the Midwest, are transported by train or trucks. It's not the case. Most of them are transported by barges through the Mississippi. The Mississippi dried up. As a result, the cost of transporting by truck, trains have increased. So some of the growers, they are storing their grains when waiting that when Mississippi will flood again, and then they will transport it at an economical rate. That's the importance of river. That's the importance. Even in a highly mechanized society, the USA, where there are hundreds of thousands of miles of high quality road, train lines, still river was the main route for transporting grains economically. So we have to think about our rivers too, because the river is the best way to transport goods, especially in a situation like this. But unfortunately, our river system are getting more and more degraded. That some sections of the rivers are occupied or silted out. All sorts of things are happening, and one of the causes is that. Probably the major causes is that the water from upstream, that is transboundary rivers, are erratic. During the dry season, we get very little water, and during the wet season, we get rainy season, we get too much of water. when there is too much rain in the northern state, in northern India, in Meghalaya, in Assam, then what they do, they open up their dams. There is rainwater, heavy rainwater. At the same time, the water from the dam suddenly released. They inundate our plain land here. That's one of the major problems. So we have to have a good negotiation with our neighbors to ensure the sustained flow of river, because we have a right. We have a right to.
We have issues with India, our neighboring country, regarding the Tista water sharing. Due to the conservative policy of the West Bengal and Sikkim government, we didn't get the previous deal. How do you think this might affect Bangladesh in the long run?
I think that it is unlikely that India will ever give us water from Tista, because at the 𝗙𝗲𝗹𝗶 point and the barrage, they diverted all the water to the Mahananda, and along that Mahananda channels, they have developed a very highly lucrative agricultural and horticultural system. Whatever water we get is beyond the 𝗙𝗲𝗹𝗶 point, the rains and some tributaries feeding that system. We will not get water from. We have to conserve water inside Bangladesh to supply during the dry season. But the problem with the Chinese program that the Chinese government offered to build a barrage or system, a river management system, reclaim land and set up industries, there will be more Chinese workers working there. India, from security point of view, India may not want so many Chinese workers so close to their Doklam border, that Siliguri corridor. So I think if as a citizen, not as a chairman or a government official, my suggestion would be to build this water system with our own money, but get this, we increase the transit charge and get it from the transit fee. You increase the transit fee considerably, recover the this cost, because this is due to India. Whatever we are suffering along the Tista basin, Tista river, it is due to India. It is their political decision. It is their decision. That is that decision has no, that's not a legal decision. That's not a right decision. What they are doing. So we will build our barrage or whatever water holding system we have to do. We'll do that with our own money and charge India through enhanced transit fee, and that will save them from security problem in their Siliguri corridor.
Dr. Ed, as I was talking with Dr. Chowdhury earlier, and I think you are aware of that, of the severity of the dengue all over Bangladesh and in many other countries. As an entomologist, what would be your suggestion to deal with dengue more effectively?
So there are a number of programs in place in other countries to use pesticides to.
But they in USA, dengue is not a problem at all. They have
although we have both 𝗙𝗵𝗹𝗶 and 𝗙ecie 𝗵𝗋. So it's always a concern that it could spring up. So there are programs in place, but as you said, that the different species have different breeding habitat. So in one case,
they have a lot of tires, abundant tires.
So for 𝗙𝗵𝗋, if you can get rid of the water in the tires or containers around the houses, that can be an effective problem. So a lot of people are working on genetic engineering as a method for controlling 𝗙s and also Anopheles, which transmit malaria. So this is a big area that I know a number of people in the U.S. and around the world are working on, and we have people in my department actually working on that to genetically engineer the mosquitoes to either eliminate the populations or to make them less competent to transmit the dengue virus.
Both of you were classmates at the University of Georgia. How did you two meet, and did you work together at the University of Georgia, Dr. Chowdhury?
He was in a different program, that is, he was a social insect. I was purely an agricultural entomology program, protecting corns from the insects. So it was a pest management program. But we were very good, close friends while we were at the University of Georgia in Athens, the great city of Athens. And but we met up with many times when we went to conferences, entomological society meetings. We met, but this is a great opportunity that Ed found time to visit Bangladesh, and I was able to take him to some places, show our great mighty rivers, 𝗙𝗏, and I hope, because he is basically an ecologist, because we all are ecologists. The University of Georgia biology students are, by training, they are ecologists. We all studied the fundamentals of ecology in our courses. So it is a great opportunity to show Ed. Tomorrow I'm going to I showed him the good rivers, mighty rivers, beautiful rivers, 𝗙𝗪𝒃 River, my hometown river. Now tomorrow we are going to show him some bad rivers, that rivers which are polluted, which are dying, and which has degraded tremendously. So he will, when he goes back to USA, he will do some work for us to how we can solve this problem, how we can save our rivers.
Dr. Edward?
Yeah, so as Manjur said, we're in different laboratories. So the way we're organized in the department is you have different professors that run laboratories, and they have different areas of research. And so ours were different, but we're in the same department, and we developed a friendship. And it's tremendous to see how successful he's been. And not just as a scientist, but as a
voice,
as a leader. Yeah, as a voice, as a leader, as an administrator, in an area that's a little bit beyond what he was trained in. But I think that speaks to the strength of our training we received at the University of Georgia. Another of our classmates,
𝗙𝗪𝒃 is running for.
He's a senator in Nigeria. So
Shola is a senator.
Yeah. There's a different classmate.
𝗙𝗪𝒃, he was a running back at the football in 1980s. He's now running for the Senate in Georgia.
As you were saying, yeah.
But as I was saying, so we have Shola in Nigeria, who's a senator, and we have Manjur, who's chairman of the National River Conservation Commission, which is a very high-level position. And then there were other students that went on to be successful scientists. So it's really nice to have that relationship over this 40-year period and see people's careers really take off.
Thank you, Dr. Manjur Ahmed Chowdhury and Dr. Edward Vargo, for the most insightful perspectives you have provided for our audience today. Thank you so much. Dear guests, the rivers and biodiversity of Bangladesh is precious and definitely worth protecting. Hopefully our conversations today was fruitful in this regard, and we hope to carry on this conversation for a long time. Thank you for joining us. Thank you so much.